Death has taken our beloved James Jimmy Kaplan. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence there is lamentation. In their tears there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends. Hear them, O God, be with them. For Jimmy's love that united us in life which death cannot sever. For his companionship that we shared along life's path, which now continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of his heart and mind that brought us joy and happiness, and is now a precious, precious remembrance. For all these and more, we give our thanks to God. We gather here in this sanctuary, a place that meant so much to Jimmy. We gather here where we have celebrated other wonderful life cycle events. We gather here to celebrate a life well lived, a life that was far too short, but was truly, truly a masterpiece. Like the beautiful music that we heard as we came in, a life that was very eclectic, a life that combined a lot of different things, but made each moment so special. You were listening to a great Spotify playlist put together by the family, and I hope that you like it, and I hope that you like the music and continue to like the music, because music was such a big part of Jimmy's life. We extend our deepest condolences to a most remarkable family, to Nancy, to Allison and Aaron, to Ben and to Alex, to grandchildren Elliot, Sam, Leo, Cade, and Cole, to an amazing brother Richard and Kathy, and to your family, and to so many family members, cousins, relatives, and so many friends who are just like family. For those in the back, there's plenty of room up front. I ask that you please come in so we don't block that back entry, the exit. Please make your way all the way up to the front. B'ya'adoa feed ruchi, into God's hands we entrust our spirit, when we are asleep and when we are awake, and as a result we shall not be afraid. The dust returns to the earth. The body was placed at Memorial Park Cemetery, but a soul is now free, a soul that we will feel, a soul that we will embrace. As his body failed, his soul got stronger and stronger. And so we hold on to that soul. We lift that soul up, and we let that soul lift us up. Into God's hands we entrust our spirit when we are asleep and when we are awake. And we shall not. We shall never be afraid.
בידו הפקיד רוחי, בעת אישה והעירה, ואם רוחי כביאתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, ואם רוחי כביאתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. בידו הפקיד רוחי, בעת אישה והעירה, ואם רוחי כביאתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא, ואם רוחי כביאתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא.
I hope that we can find comfort in those beautiful words which remind us that we hope and pray that Jimmy's soul is now with God and in God's care. But we know that a part of his soul goes on to live also through each and every one of us, through the stories, through the wisdom, through all the moments that we shared with him. But mostly, I know that Jimmy goes on to live through all of us through the love that he shared so freely. The poet Merritt Malloy said the following: "When I die, give what's left of me away to children and old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands and by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away." I have no doubt that Jimmy's family and friends will continue to do that, and that his legacy will continue, and that we will think of him, of course, at the best days of our lives, the moments of celebration, but he will also be with us, giving us strength even in the difficult ones. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we will remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we will remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we will remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we will remember him. When we are lost and sick at heart, we will remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. When we have achievements that are based on his, we will remember him. But as long as we live, he too shall live, for he is now and always will be a part of us as we remember him. There is certainly comfort that can be found in the memories, and comfort in knowing that even though the path that we all must walk down now without Jimmy by our side may feel dark and difficult, but our tradition is so wise. Our tradition tells us that when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we are never alone. We have one another holding us up, and we also are able to find God's presence. Inside your pamphlet, we can find the words of the 23rd Psalm, which we read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנודה שירביצני, על מי מנוחות ינחלני. נפשי ישוביב ינחני במעגלי צדק, למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגצל מוות, לא אירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תישן תבה שמן ראשי כוסי רוויה אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
The words of Rabbi Larry Kushner. Each lifetime is the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. For some, there are more pieces. For others, the puzzle is more difficult to assemble. Some seem to be born with nearly a completed puzzle, and so it goes, souls going this way and that, trying to assemble the myriad of parts. But know this, no one has within themselves all the pieces to their puzzle. Like before the days when they used to seal jigsaw puzzles in cellophane, ensuring that all the pieces were there. Everyone carries with them at least one, and probably many pieces, to someone else's puzzle. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't. And when you present your piece, which is worthless to you, to another, whether you know it or not, whether they know it or not, you are a messenger from God Most High. Every single person in this room, every single person on this live stream, every single person, somehow, some way, received a piece of Jimmy's puzzle. Maybe you got it directly from him. I saw someone who said they've known him for more than 55 years as grade school friends. Maybe you got it in the real estate world. Maybe you got it in the music world. Maybe you got it directly from him. Maybe you got it from Nancy. Maybe you got it from his children. Maybe you got it from the years in Glencoe. Somehow, some way, every single person in this room received a piece of Jimmy Kaplan's puzzle. And he loved sharing. He loved that sharing that piece with everyone. It just made him happy to share. And when we share our piece, we truly are a messenger, an angel from God Most High. This week in the Torah, last week in the Torah, we read of angels ascending and descending on Jacob's ladder. We feel those angels. We understand the angels coming down, but what about the angels going up? Those are the angels among us, the people just like Jimmy, who lifted our spirits just by the way he talked, just by his sarcastic and funny, some of his really bad jokes. He lifted our spirits by making us feel important, by making us feel connected. But no one has as big of a piece of the puzzle as his family. In a book called God Whispers, it's written, the true worth of a life is the story that it leaves behind. Tell that story well. Did he teach you about love every day? Did he personify genius or sensitivity? No question about that. Did his life warn you of the danger of bitterness and anger? For sure. As I stand and behold the eyes of those who mourn, I realize the only difference between people in this world is not their wealth, their fame, or their success. The only difference is those that had love in their life and those who did not. Jimmy Kaplan had love in his life from the day he came into this world until his very final breath on Friday. And so much of that love was centered around family. So Ben, it's my honor to ask you to come forward first, to begin to pay tribute to your dad. You're taller than you were at confirmation.
Mic's a little higher, voice is a little lower. The thousands of times I called my dad, he never once answered the phone and said hello. There was always some comment or statement or question. I tried to figure out what he would say if everyone here was calling him right now. Maybe something like, I can think of an easier way to get a free bagel. But I can't quite capture his voice. My dad was the king of the really long emotional text message, one of those where you'd open it up and have to scroll up a few times to get to the beginning. So in honor of him, I wrote one really long thing for him here. Sorry in advance. While he liked to write and read a lot online and in the newspaper, he was not for most of his life a big reader of books. Tom Wolfe's A Man in Full, which to be fair is over 700 pages long, went on more family vacations with us than Alex and Aaron combined. He started building reading momentum when he realized that he liked books that were made up of smaller, preferably self-contained chapters. So for him, I wrote some shorter, self-contained eulogies here to trick him and all of you into making it through one long eulogy. I hope you understand that this is no time for what he'd call the 10-cent tour. Number 1, road trip. There's a tendency in death to mythologize people, especially at these things. That would be a very dishonest thing to do for someone who never in any way set out to be a myth. My dad was always very human. I think one of his greatest strengths was his vulnerability. Some of my earliest memories of my dad are him saying, "You didn't come with an instruction manual." If he tried something with me that didn't land, or if he was unsuccessful in any efforts to console me, he'd look at me and say, "Hey, you didn't come with an instruction manual," which is kind of a startlingly vulnerable thing to say, especially to a 4-year-old. A lot of us walk around projecting these images of ourselves, avatars that hide our insecurities and project confidence. I never saw that with him. There was no shell or armor, just him. And that message got through to me early. I remember at 7 or 8, my Nana once encouraging me to do something, the specifics of which escaped me, because if I did, I'd grow up big and strong like my dad. And I remember thinking, well, he isn't big, he's more like slightly above average. He isn't what you traditionally think of as strong. I mean, he's not some big muscly guy, he's more of an endurance athlete. He was never 8 feet tall to me, he was my dad, and that was so much more than enough. This isn't to say I didn't think the world of him, quite the contrary. When I was no older than 10, I drew a picture of a monster dad and a monster kid. The dad was coming home holding the sun, not the sun like his kid, the sun like the thing in the sky, saying, "I brought home the sun for you." That power of generosity was what dads were to me. He had that picture framed in his office, and when Alex and I moved into our first condo together, he bought us a beautiful ceramic sun that we still have today. As a marathon runner and cyclist, he exhibited an extraordinary mental toughness and discipline. He seemed to enjoy activities that were difficult. A road trip with him wasn't just a road trip, it was a chance to prove how long he could drive and in how few stops he could do it. He'd make it a game. Find a rabbit, that's a car with an in-state license plate driving pretty fast. Follow behind him to minimize the chances of a ticket. We had some great road trips, just the two of us. In 1995, after a karate tournament in Des Moines, Iowa, he had this grand idea to stop at the Field of Dreams on the way, just a slight detour. We had a catch on the iconic field, walked into the corn stalks. The plan was to find a hotel on the way home. It was starting to get a little late. He kept saying, "One more exit, one more exit, one more exit." Then, of course, we hit a stretch where there wasn't an exit for dozens of miles. Needless to say, it was a late night. I don't recall what we had for dinner, but it probably came out of a vending machine. He planned this perfect father-son moment, one we'd reminisce about forever. And we did, just not about the actual field and the game of catch. He told that story about the drive with more pride than shame. How do you know what you're capable of if you don't push yourself? When I graduated from college in 2009, my mom flew with her mom and Allison and Aaron and little baby Elliot. And my dad volunteered to lug me and my stuff from Western Mass back to Glencoe. I had had probably a combined 15 hours of sleep that previous week, so I slept most of the drive. He didn't seem to mind. He had an average MPH record to beat and a big soda to sip, although slowly, so he didn't have to stop and pee too often. On that drive, we had a very brief conversation about a long relationship of mine that had just ended. We never really talked much about relationships. He never really talked much about his life before my mom, but he shared a bit and told me something along the lines of, "You might feel like a failure, but there's a difference between it failing and you failing." In 2013, I had the opportunity to purchase Final Four tickets through my alma mater at face value. I thought, oh, that'll be cool, but there's no way I can make it happen on short notice. My dad, sensing an opportunity to combine two of his favorite things, father-son bonding, and a really good deal, said, no, this is definitely happening. Going to the Final Four together was something he'd always wanted to do. Besides gas stops, we took one break on the 11-hour drive to Atlanta, in Louisville, for some, as he would call it, barbecue. He had this incredible ability to sniff out hidden gem restaurants just by looking at them. There was the college trip to North Carolina, where he found a little barbecue spot on the side of the road that had the best hush puppies we'd ever eaten. There was the karate tournament in Charleston, South Carolina, where we braved the buffet at Country Earl's Stomp and Chomp, and where I first learned that you could be identified as a Yankee even if you didn't wear pinstripes and have a mitt. Anyway, back to Atlanta, we had an incredible weekend. It was late afternoon on Sunday when we finally left. We'd get home at 3 or 4 in the morning. I suggested we stop halfway, and he said, "Just get me a big-ass Diet Coke and I'll get us home." And he did. Now again, this isn't some myth. He wasn't genetically engineered in a lab to bike, run, and drive long distances, perfectly content with his own thoughts and the possibility of breaking a personal best. He was human. That mental toughness went out the window when it came to snacks and sweets. His mom called him Cookie Boy. Now Alex calls me Cookie Boy Jr. and Cade Cookie Boy III. Bags of pretzels and trail mix trembled in fear when he opened the cabinet door. He never met a blizzard he didn't like. He possessed these weaknesses that somehow accentuated his strengths, and he never once hid from them. Number 2, things I got from my dad. Besides a weakness for sweets, I inherited some other things from my dad. When I have long, wiry, unruly eyebrow hair, which crop up more and more these days, that's lovingly referred to in my house as a Jimmy brow. I'm not sure what took his longtime barber George more time, cutting his hair or trimming his trademark unibrow. Speaking of hair, I'm lucky to have a nice full head of hair, thanks Dad. Although my hair is nowhere near as iconic as what he referred to as his defining feature. I will also carry on his legacy by waiting way too long to get it cut. He taught me indirectly that each comment about needing a haircut from one's wife pushes out the timing of said haircut by at least another week. Maybe my mom and Alex can form a support group. I've been informed that I tend to whisper too loud, especially when talking about people within earshot, another strong Jimbo trait. Even though we were both technically right-handed, I got his weird quasi-ambidextrousness. My dad swung a baseball bat and a golf club lefty. I shoot a basketball lefty. As for golf, his love of the game, or lack thereof, was another quality that didn't exactly skip a generation. We played together one time on an excursion during an Alaskan cruise. For a total hack, he really reared back and swung the club with a lot of gusto. On one shot, he whacked the heck of it, and it sliced, vroom, like a heat-seeking missile, hit the one cart we saw out there the entire afternoon. I also got his weird ability to magically process mass amounts of tequila shots. My dad was not a big drinker, but he enjoyed a marg from time to time and loved a celebratory wedding tequila shot. At my wedding, he really got after it. I mentioned recently to some friends that I thought he had about 24 shots that night, and they all laughed. No way, they said. It had to be at least 30. The next day, he was completely unfazed, and I'm pretty sure he never drank again. Jimmy also passed down lots of lingo, phrases like shutting down the house before bed, and touch it once to encourage not procrastinating, usually when cleaning up. Cleaning up is probably a good place to transition into the qualities he did not pass along to me. A study found that 2/3 of men marry women like their mothers. Apparently, I married someone like my father. Alex and my dad had a very strong, special bond, at which cleanliness and order sat at the very center. I can't talk about that bond because I'm trying to make it through this with as few tears as possible. Where we differed, he never once pushed. Okay, I guess he once pushed. He took hot dogs very seriously. As a kid at Michael's, he refused to order my hot dog for me because I liked it just with ketchup. He always made sure to tell the man making the dog that he wasn't sure I was his son, or tell another one of his patented sarcastic jokes. Maybe it was just another challenge. I think in his eyes, I actually became a man when I told the guy at Michael's I wanted my dog with everything on it, excluding ketchup, of course. A drag through the garden didn't mean quite as much as reading Torah, but it was close. When he felt me leaning towards decisions he agreed with or drifting towards a mistake, he would deliver a well-timed note, usually handwritten. When I was a sophomore in college, flirting with the idea of jumping back into basketball and attempting to walk on to the team, but really, really afraid of failing and humiliating myself, it was a newspaper article about how special it is to be a part of a team and just how fleeting that experience is in life. It was another suggestion to push the fear aside and go for it. And it was another little nudge that led to lifelong friendships and very special memories. He let me find my own way and discover what resonated with me. He let me live my own life and make my own mistakes. I could do whatever as long as I did it as well as I could. Number 3, leave the gun, take the cannoli. When my dad started going through treatment, he leaned on one example he had of a patriarch running the family while dealing with a health setback, Don Vito Corleone. When he was tired, his voice raspier, he did a decent Brando, which I'm not going to attempt to do. Last week, his voice was getting weak, and he started most of his conversations with me saying, "Now listen, whoever comes to you with this Barzini meeting, he's the traitor. Don't forget that." So if anyone comes to me with any business proposals this week, I'm on to you. His favorite Godfather quote, the one he used the most, was, "A man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man." If that's the case, he was one of the manliest men ever. He never missed anything. He spent time with his grandchildren, creating special routines, and managed to form these little bonds he was so skilled at fostering with cousins and uncles and nieces and nephews. Through his actions, he and my mom both taught me that family was paramount and just how powerful it is to show up and be there. And of course, there was his relationship with his brother. When my son Cole was born, my dad sat Cade down and told him how lucky he was to have a brother, because GJ has a brother, and he's GJ's best friend. I'm trying not to focus much on the time my dad was sick, because they don't define him. But those times helped define some of the people around him. My mom, who he loved so much and never missed a chance to call his girlfriend, and who took such incredible care of him physically and emotionally. He very infrequently spoke of the time after he'd be gone, but his one request, made many times, was to make sure that as my mom got older, she would be taken care of the same way she took care of him. My sister, his medical advocate, his daughter, his dear friend, and Richard, who visited frequently and made my dad continue to feel like the luckiest brother out there. There's so much more I could say about these three relationships, but I think most everyone here is aware of how special they are. And again, I'm trying not to cry. Vito also said friendship is everything. Friendship is more than talent. It is more than government. It is almost the equal of family. My dad understood the importance of friends, of community, and of letting people know you're thinking of them. The last gift he gave me was a set of stationery. He believed in the power of the handwritten note. Two more Vito lines I'm guessing Richard's words will emphasize. Great men are not born great, they grow great. And forgive, forget, life is full of misfortunes. And finally, what Vito said to Michael when he was getting involved in the family business. "I never wanted this for you." I guess another amendment to my dad rarely influencing my choices was his strongest objection that I avoid the real estate world. My dad had some career regrets. He always loved politics and wished he pursued it. In his office, among the shopping center plaques and the article about him in Cranes, he kept his past from the 1996 Democratic National Convention. He might have regretted what he did a little bit, but he didn't regret how he did things. He told me once I probably could have made more money and been more successful had I made a few sacrifices, but those weren't sacrifices I wanted to make. I wrote most of this in his basement office, and it's no coincidence that those work mementos are not in the most prominent spots. They aren't what you see from his desk chair when you look away from the computer. It's the pictures of his wife, of his family, of Pete, of Stephen, that are the ones right at eye level, the ones he'd see the most. Work wasn't life. Work was just a part of life. Family, friends, that was life. Number 4, Bulls games. My dad might be the only person in Chicago who had Bulls season tickets in the early 80s, gave them up right before they drafted that Jordan guy, and then got them back in 99 right after he retired. In high school and after college, we spent a lot of our time together at Bulls games. Besides the games, we loved to watch the people around us. The guy over to the right, who attended games by himself for years, and then started bringing a woman, who he eventually married, judging by the rings on their fingers. There was the obnoxious guy in front of us, who brought belligerent buddies, then many different women, then one woman for a while, and then back to belligerent buddies. It was easy to notice the passage of time for them, less for us. The year before I had Cade, the team was worse, free time was harder to come by, and he gave up the tickets. We only went to a few games after that, always accompanied by the pregame dinner somewhere in the West Loop. We'd talk hoops during the game and life on the drive home, special moments I'm so thankful we had together. The last game we ever went to together, I was fortunate enough to score some NBA All-Star Game tickets through work. To be able to bring my dad not just to any game, but the All-Star Game, I thought I was repaying part of my debt, but the night was just another gift from him to me. It was February of 2020. Obviously, we had no idea it was coming in both a macro and micro sense. It was the first All-Star Game to experiment with what's called the Elam ending, where at a certain point in the fourth quarter, they shut off the clock, determine a target score, and whichever team hits that target first wins. No ticking clock, no desperation, just make the most of each possession. Reminds me of how he lived these last 13 months. Number 5, garage door. There aren't like 15 of these, I promise. One late summer Friday in 2021, my mom and Kate were heading off on their usual adventures. She opened her garage and the chain came off the track, causing the automatic door to stop functioning. When my dad got to the house, he took one look and said he could fix it. He worked for well over an hour. It was one of those hot, sticky days. He was dripping with sweat, his shirt completely soaked through. After a few visits in the garage to see what I could do to help and bring him something to drink, I told him, just please drop it. We'll have someone come take a look. He kept asking for more time, pointing to his progress untangling knots and putting the chain back on the track, convinced he could fix it. Eventually he gave in. When the guy from the garage door company came out, he told me a piece broke off. Without that piece, there was nothing my dad could do to fix the door. Didn't stop him from trying and trying and trying. We didn't know it at the time, but when he was up on that ladder tinkering away, he was sick. I'll skip most of the details because they aren't the point, but he treated that cancer like he treated that garage door. He faced a problem that really had no solution and still worked as hard as he possibly could. My dad was the embodiment of the phrase, "You don't have cancer, cancer has you." And boy, did cancer ever have my dad. On the infusion chair, he'd play music and crack cringeworthy jokes. They started him on a treatment that he had to take home for a few days, that he wore in a fanny pack sort of thing. He called it his dick in a box. Sorry, Rabbi. When they hooked him up to the little contraption, he'd without fail take out his phone and play the song. Sorry again. When the device irritated him, he'd paraphrase President Lyndon Johnson and say, "This thing's agitating my nutsack." He had every excuse to be negative, depressed, and self-centered. Never. Working on that garage door, he was focusing on the needs of those he loved. When Alex and I lost our baby 23 weeks into pregnancy early this year, he sent many a long, heartfelt text to one or both of us, or on days when he wasn't feeling as great, he just sent a checking in, LVJ. When we told him at the high holidays that Alex had had a doctor's appointment, and to our great shock, she was expecting again, he started to cry. It will forever remain the most I think I've ever seen him cry. I thought he was just happy for us, happy to have something happy. He explained the next day to me that he was so happy because, yeah, obviously the baby is great news, but more so that the pregnancy was proof that we didn't grow distant during what was a hard time for us. Thinking about this soon-to-be-born baby and my dad could give me a lot of sadness, but his reaction and the message he shared will instead always fill me with joy and remind me of his love for others, the way he could see to the heart of a matter. My boys are 5 and 2. Not once have I looked at them and said, "You didn't come with an instruction manual." Not because I have all the answers. Far from it. I did have an instruction manual. It was my dad. This is a postscript called Messages from Beyond. We had blues music playing in the hospital on Friday afternoon. After he died, the very next song that played was B.B. King's The Thrill Is Gone. I chalked it up to coincidence, but also kind of thought, funny one, Dad. Driving home that night, I called Alex and then decided to just flip on my playlist of starred songs on Spotify on shuffle. The very first song that came on was Next Door Neighbor Blues by Gary Clark Jr. The last time my dad and I were at a concert together, Gary Clark Jr. He is an incredible live performer, but his studio recordings never really clicked with me. There are 378 songs on my starred playlist, only one by Gary Clark Jr. I try to be a logical person, could be a coincidence, but there's a less than 0.3% chance of that song coming up first. After a few more songs, a beautiful song called Home Again by Michael Kiwanuka played. This would be the last song of the trip as I was only a few minutes away from my house. The song goes, "So I close my eyes, look behind, moving on, lost again, lost again. One day I know our paths will cross again. Smile again, smile again. One day I hope to make you smile again." The song ended right when I shut the car off. I was kind of a mess at that point, so I wasn't able to turn off the music before the next song started. It was a song by Sufjan Stevens called Death with Dignity. Of those 378 songs, only 2 have the words dead, death, or dying. It's on an album called Carrie and Lowell, which is about the songwriter's relationship with his late mother and her second husband, the man who was not his biological father, but who provided stability, and with whom he formed a close relationship. Sound familiar? I played the album for my dad once. He told me the music was too depressing. Maybe the songs were random, but I hope not. I hope he was telling us that he felt his passing had dignity, and to remind us, as the refrain in the song said, that every road leads to an end. That's too depressing a note to end on, so I'll leave you with his own words. We knew he had this Facebook page where he managed his music stuff, connecting with musicians and finding jams and whatnot. He had so much fun jamming and playing gigs in the second musical act of his life, and had the privilege of playing at the House of Blues, Buddy Guy's, and City Winery. We had no idea that Jim the bass guy was such an active poster, and that he shared the news of his diagnosis in a long post on November 6, 2021, before many of his family and friends even knew. Here's part of what he wrote, which we all read for the first time yesterday. To be honest, the source for blame for all of this is either an extremist right-wing cult seeking some form of something and doing it through me, or a series of bass players who will do just about anything to land the steady gig that I still seek and for which I am far more qualified and capable, or inch their way up on a jam list so that they can play with the cool kids and make contortionistic, orgasmic-like facial expressions, yet still fail to land on the one at proper time. None have thus far stepped forward to claim responsibility. Then again, there are those just jealous of my hair. His final post, which he wrote on his 1-year cancerversary, exactly 1 month ago, was another beautiful and incredibly positive note. He ended, thanks for that phone ringing, that bought me a minute. He ended, I'm thoroughly convinced there will be a next version of me that will get me back in the saddle and doing something I love. Try to be less judgmental and more compassionate. Hug a friend, a spouse, a child or grandchild. Be grateful for what you are and what you have. Wishing all peace, love, and good music. Hope to see you folks soon.
Allison, I invite you to come forward. Ben, your words were absolutely perfect. We can feel that music coursing through all of us. And we can just hear your dad. Allison, you got this.
Ben specifically asked to go first because he said, well, Allison will make me cry, so thanks. I'm going to drink this water. It's not milk. Wow. I will cry more than that. So first, Jimmy would tell me to breathe, so I'm going to do that. I mean, do you guys need like a 7th inning stretch or something? Like, okay. What the fuck, man? I heard my dad say that a lot over the last year or so. Probably did not nail the accent, but first I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Jimmy, Nancy, Ben, and I, and our families have felt incredibly bolstered by the love and support this whole year, and especially this week. And I don't think he'd ate the turnout. I also feel for you, Jimmy's family, supporters, special friends, some of who he recently referred to as the League of Extraordinarily Concerned Gentlemen. And thank you for all the check-ins to both of my parents. They helped more than you know. Ben and I both had a hard time editing. We want to say everything, but then you'd be here until Friday, so I'll speak knowing that there will always be more to say, and maybe things I could have left out. About 8 years ago, my dad started emailing me. When the time comes, these are some things I want at my funeral. Thought we had all the time in the world. One of the things he asked for was that we don't cry. I was the first to fail. He also wanted me to drive the Porsche today, but it's in storage, and I knew that would never happen anyway. Aside from those two things and a bunch of pink flamingos on the lawn, and referring to him as Richard's brother, he said, and I quote, "That's an honor, by the way. I think we've got everything else." One of the things that has felt so unfair to me about this week is that Jimmy and I chose each other, and we wanted to keep choosing each other. It took a little time, but he chose me as his daughter, and I chose him as my dad. We love to tell the story of little 7-year-old me on the first night he came over. I reached up for the doorknob. I cracked the door. I peeked around the corner. He looked really tall, had a lot of dark hair, oh, that hair, with sprinkles of gray, and I noticed his square jaw. Here's what I remember next. We had Friday nights eating pizza from Cheese to Please and watching Dallas and Falcon Crest. He bought special note paper, and I had lines of notes from him taped together on the back of my bedroom door. He made my mom laugh so hard that she would wheeze, and then that would make me laugh, and that would make her laugh even harder. I remember his outgoing answering machine message. "Hey, Mon, I'm down at the beach having a party right now, Mon." He made us and so many he met laugh all the time. Sure, sometimes it was because he was funny and sometimes because he was weird, but it didn't matter because there was laughter. We couldn't figure out how to word it in the obituary to say that Jimmy married both my mom and me, but that's how it was. Their anniversary is our anniversary. And day one, he was on dad duty, and I was not easy. But he continued to choose me, and I him. In case you've never heard, he can be pretty particular about things, especially around the house. He did the morning shift. He'd stand in front of me and say, "Motivation," and I'd punch him as hard as I could in the butt. He'd jokingly limp off to get himself ready for the day, and that was enough to keep me laughing for the morning. He drove me to school. Even when I was in high school, he'd play Uncle John's band as we drove along Old Green Bay Road in his forest green Volvo. That's why my nails are forest green today. Freshman year of high school, when we got the list of extracurriculars we might be interested in, I thought, Jimmy's a runner, maybe I'll try that. Who knew this would be the beginning of an exciting running career in high school and into my 20s, and an opportunity to bond even more. My dad was an at-home coach, a sideline motivator without ever pushing. He was at every starting line to get me psyched and ready. He would do this. And every finish line, because my win was his win. My senior year, he coached the freshmen at New Trier so he could be at practice with me every day. For several years on my birthday, he and I would drive to Davenport, Iowa to run the Big 7 together. We'd drive in his Porsche, the one he got a month before I was born, my twin, as it were. We'd have its old school dial radio blasting, and we'd practice that old radio warm-up. 1 hen, 2 ducks, 3 squawking geese. It was a long drive, and we got pretty good at it. It was a hilly 7-mile race with carbo loading at Olive Garden as my birthday dinner the night before. Years later, he was the first one to find me for a hug when I qualified for Boston, and I was honored and thrilled to follow in his actual footsteps. On December 12th, 2003, I officially became a Kaplan. I had always been one already, but I couldn't wait to pull off my sweatshirt in the courtroom and reveal my Kaplan team t-shirt and make it legit. My dad helped me through some pretty hard things over the years and never judged. We chose each other. In the past 10 years or so, we also chose each other as friends. We could be there for each other, hold each other's hands, give each other words of wisdom, and, vent to each other via text. For my mom, my dad was an amazing partner, friend, husband and boyfriend. People have things in their lives that make them who they are. And when my parents came together, they had the same values. My mom said, "Here's a man who actually listens." But truly, he listened, and listened with his heart. He valued friends and he valued family. And despite our 11-year age difference, Ben and I remain close siblings, something that was really important to our dad and that he helped foster. In the last several years, my dad had 4 favorite categories of things: food, bikes, cars, guitars. He was a foodie and self-made chef. He connected to new and old friends through tasty food talk, bike rides, Porsche talk, and blues jams. He made meaningful relationships wherever he went. As Ben said, even this week we discovered that he had a Facebook account, Jim the Bass Guy, where people shared that they loved his chats, his thoughtfulness, his musical talent. His memory was incredible, from tiny details of his childhood, his life as a single guy, TV shows, movies, his Rolodex of memory, of music, his memory, his knowledge. Music, memory, and knowledge. And what happened when I was in high school, some of which I wish had been forgotten. Next came the era of grandchildren, and GJ, Grandpa Jimmy, as he is called. Next, he took what he did for me and Ben and doubled down. He was a diaper changer, a feeder. He got down on the floor, he got dirty, drooled on, he played at the park. He'd find the traditional snack or experience to enjoy with each grandchild. Ben and I were 11 years apart. It wasn't that hard to give us individual attention. With the grandkids, he made each one feel unique, individual, special. He's like the Ted Lasso of grandparents, always ready with a saying, pop culture reference, song lyrics, important words of advice, and the ability to patiently let you become your own successful person. While Ben may or may not be the favorite child, it's hotly debated, I have been reminded over the years by Jimmy that, quote, I am his greatest accomplishment. Because he never stops with the love, the laugh, the life advice, opportunities for forgiveness, resilience, gratitude, and optimism. I'm inspired and really hope to carry those qualities forward. Nothing has been more an example of that than this past year. He didn't even get grumpy until the last few weeks. His hair still looked fantastic. He was always cute and handsome and always funny. Truly so clever and smart, even into his last hours. He called it door 4. The afternoon before he went through door 4, he nibbled a couple ice chips. When one fell onto his shirt, he tossed it across the room toward the trash and made it. As Richard said, he had to make one last shot. In the past few days, since door 4, there have been several things that I just really wanted to tell him. I imagine that feeling will never go away. So with this opportunity, I'd like to share a couple of those things with you. The first one is that I texted a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in a while and sent her the obituary. The text had barely gone through, and she called me immediately, crying on the other end of the phone. When she apologized for crying, I said it was okay and that it was nice to know she loved him. And she said, he was such a big part of our high school experience. Do you know how huge that is for someone's dad to be a part of the high school experience of a daughter and her friends? I have a 13-year-old daughter, and it feels nearly impossible. That is truly who he was. He made an impact on everyone. The other thing I really want to tell him is this. Paul Simon's You Can Call Me Al always seemed like our song. You know, you can call me Jimmy, Jimmy, when I call you, you can call me Al. I always bugged him about learning the bass solo, and he never did. He said something about slapping the bass in a way that he doesn't usually do, and that it was really hard, and I gave him a bit of a hard time about it on and off. So the other day I looked it up on YouTube, and here's the thing. When the solo was recorded, the guy played the first half. They recorded it, and the second half of it is the same solo played in reverse. No wonder he didn't play it. It was literally impossible. I really need to let him know. Here are a few more things my dad requested over the years to happen today. First, he had a lot of song requests. We made a playlist. The one you heard when you came in, that was his songs he picked. And you'll be able to hear more after the service. He had a song for everything. He'd wake up and play I Can See Clearly Now, the Johnny Nash version, and then have breakfast where there was a mix of blues and motivational songs, anything from rock to rap to blues, and from every decade from the 50s till now. When he went for procedures every other week, he had a certain song played there, a playlist for chemo, a song for removing the fanny pack, as you heard, and blues in the hospital. One of his funeral requests was that a couple of friends he met while playing bass in the last several years to play a song called If I Had a Boat, and we'll get to hear that too after the service. Another thing he asked for was team t-shirts. Every year in recent memory, he'd make himself a custom t-shirt with song title lyrics related to that age. Route 66, Now We Are 70, things like that. He's always told me that his theme song is Touch of Grey by the Grateful Dead. You know, amazing hair with a touch of gray. So here are the shirts. It looks like this. If you're a Kaplan, a Littman, and there's some extras for others to wear after the service. So if you get one, please wear it then. I want to say something to my kids, things that I think GJ would say. Leo, hey goofy kid, bring it in for a hug and let's go to the zoo. Sam, I need you right here under my arm to watch this game, and then we're going to go prep some pickles. Elliot, pull up an end. Still have that spoon? I've got the Nutella. And what he actually said in his last hours when we said, I love you, was love you more. Jimmy was my dad, and I know who he was to me. And you know how it is when someone's your dad, like they're just your dad. You don't know what they're like otherwise. And the last few days, I feel like I've learned a lot about who he was as a person outside of my dad. So this is my story. I know that Jimmy's life, experiences, humor, motivational tidbits, and words of wisdom affected many others. From real estate, teaching continuing education, music, travels, hobbies, friends, and family. I hope that you'll stay this evening for the celebration of life and that you'll be here for the Shiva because we want to hear your stories too. And before I go, and this is true, Jimmy asked for, and I quote, instead of a moment of silence, I want a moment of absolute chaotic noise. As I exit the bima, please create some chaos. Whoop, cry, clap, sing, throw the gut-wrenching tantrum that we all actually want to throw right now. If you know your Grateful Dead, feel free to sing a little Touch of Grey. Dad, I miss you so much, and I love you. Mwah. Thank you.
Elliot, I invite you to come forward. You got this.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming today and supporting my family. As the oldest grandchild, I'm speaking for the grandchildren younger than me and the ones to come. The person we're here to remember was my grandfather, that I called GJ. He was one of the most amazing people I've ever met. He made each of the grandchildren feel equally special. He talked to us like real people, and he never failed to make us laugh. He was always there for a hug or a life lesson. He made a difference in each of our lives as the best grandpa a grandchild could ask for. One of my favorite memories of him was when I'd stay with him and Nani, and I'd naturally say, "I miss Mama." And his response was always, "Well, I miss chicken." From walking to the fish store, to singing together on the couch, to getting pink cake pops from Starbucks, he was always there for me and for everyone, supporting us all. Even when I saw him last week, he made a choice to be with us, even though it was difficult for him. I'm so grateful for all the time we got together, and the memory of his love and positivity will last forever. Thank you.
Richard, I invite you to come forward.
Does this come off? Yeah, Leo and Rex right here in front. Is this on? Yeah. I have a story for you guys. A story about Jimmy. The rest of you can listen if you wish. My mother, Elaine Kaplan, they called her Honeybee, was 36 years old. That's Alex's age when she was divorced. And Jimmy was 5 years old. You have some cousins who are 5 in family. And I can't imagine how incredibly hard it was for her as a 36-year-old single mom to raise kids. And she had very little support. There were no nannies. There were no grandparents. She was really on her own. And the reason I'm telling you this, and there's some history on the hot dog. Honeybee, mom, loved hot dogs. And it wouldn't be unusual to find her at 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon at a Fluky's or a Wolfie's eating a hot dog. And that, Rabbi, is where the garden started. My mother would load the hot dog up with tomatoes, onions, piccalilli, everything that Jimmy loved on his. So the reason I'm telling you this story is that my mother died 28 years ago. And every year since then, Jimmy and I would meet at the cemetery on her birthday, and we'd bring hot dogs. And we'd load them up, drag them through the garden. In the early years, we would eat on the side of the cars, spill all over ourselves. Then we got smart, and we got little camper chairs and a little folding table. And we'd sit there and we'd reminisce. And Elliot, when you came on the scene, then we would start talking about the children and the grandchildren. And Elliot and Sam and Leo, he loved you. His heart would fill up. You could sit him, he'd stop eating. That's how much he loved you. And you could just feel him just kind of swell up with this pride and love that he had for you. And I'd mention you, Rex, and we'd move on. And then we would talk about the children. And Allison and Ben, you could just feel, again, how much he loved and you guys. I mean, it was incredible to feel all that. I would mention David and Lizzie, but he went to whole new levels. And then when Aaron and Alex showed up, I mean, you were his children. He was so happy that his kids had you guys in their lives, and he loved you as children. Nancy, I can't tell you how often he would say how much he loved you. It was, he loved you, he liked you, he respected you, he was so proud of you. The work, karate, how you were handling the kids. And then when the grandkids came, I mean, you hit a whole new level. And what I think, Allison, you were his friend. He liked you. You were his girlfriend. And then this last year, you know, I got to see you really often. And the way you took care of him, the way you loved him, was phenomenal. No one ever could have done a better job. And I'd sit there in the couch, and he'd be sitting in his corner, and you'd be up on the edge of the couch, and we'd be talking, and you were phenomenal. You couldn't ask for anything more. You took care of him. You loved him. You laughed at his jokes all the time. So thank you. Thank you. All right, back to the kids. Jimmy was a marathon runner, as you know. Can you imagine how hard it is to run 26 miles, and how much time, effort it takes to get to that point? And it was just something he wanted to do. He wanted to be good at it. And he spent the time, put it in. And one of the things my mother used to say, and I forgot to mention earlier, she was the most optimistic. And whenever she had something to do, she really said, I got this. And I think those are some of the traits that Jimmy inherited from her. Her will, her heart, and her determination to do something. And she would just say, I got this. And Jimmy, when he was beginning the marathons and starting it, I know that he would just get up, wake up in the morning, put his feet on the floor, and say, I've got this. Allison, you opened the door for me on this. So can you just say, I got this? Okay, good. The bike riding, the hundreds of miles that he would ride, and the preparation, and he knew, and Nancy, you know, he knew he'd go out in these rides and he'd come home and he'd cramp up on the couch. He had a word for it, Jimmy cramping or something. Cramping, legs of Jimmy, legs of Jimbo. And he knew he would be in pain for hours, but he still took that challenge, and he finished those races strong. And I know he got up every morning, put his feet on the floor, and said, I got this. The same thing for his real estate career. I mean, for 50 years, He got up every morning, put his feet on the floor, and can I get some others? The real estate world, and I know it a little bit, is full of bad people. It's like a Star Wars bar. I mean, you see these crazy people out there. And we talk about it at work all the time. There's not a day that goes by that somebody doesn't lie to us. And there are a couple of you out there, I know. But Jimmy was one of the good guys. He did it all for 50 years as one of the good guys. I got so many calls this last couple of days, people who knew him, and the first thing they would say, Jimmy was a good guy. He knew the difference between being right and doing the right thing, and he did it. He had this mensch code. He just did it the right way, which is very hard in our world, but that was his reputation. And when he got sick, same thing. He wanted to be that person that got through this, doing it the way he wanted to do it, with the mental strength and the physical strength that was incredible. I mean, we all saw him, and we knew what he was going through. And he was optimistic, and every day he'd get up, put his feet on the floor. I got this. So, what's the moral of our story? You can go through all of life's challenges and be a good guy and do it the right way and have lots and lots of people that love you. And the goal is find the joy, find people you love to be with that make you happy. And Rabbi, hi, asked us the other day, what could we take from Jimmy? What could we learn from Jimmy? And I think that what we can learn is you get up every morning, you put your feet on the floor, and you say, love, love. Thank you.
Because he wanted to talk. He wanted to share information about his life. He told me that he had bile duct cancer, biliary tract cancer, nonspecific. He knew that he'd never be able to kill it off, but he was not going to let it define him. He said, I'm doing my best life. He told me over and over again he's grateful. Grateful for what he's been able to do. And most of all, he's at peace with it all. However it plays out, and so began a series of texts and visits, trips to the hospital, moments that we shared together. I'm going to edit my words very briefly, but I want to include his words because that's what he wanted. We talked about his early years. We talked about Wisconsin. He loved Wisconsin. Nancy's brother Keith also went to Wisconsin. And Jimmy was one of the guys Keith hung out with. KB and Arlene got married on Jimmy's 21st birthday. And at a party where Jack Michelin was pouring drinks, Nancy and Jimmy met. Nancy, at age 18, got a little loopy. Those drinks were a little strong. And there's a picture of the two of you kissing on the cheek. KB and Arlene were married the next day. Jimmy brought a date to the wedding. You went out once after that, but it wasn't anything to write home about. You both went on with your lives, got married. In 1976, he bought a Porsche. You had a baby. Allison came into this world. And Arlene Bronstein, thank you, because on several occasions you told your sister-in-law, call Jimmy. You made it happen. She said no, she said no, she said no. Someone at work finally said, call Jimmy Kaplan. And you finally did. And I love that you called, you found his office number, his secretary said, Nancy Bronstein's on the phone. And instead of saying hello, because Ben, you are right, he never said hello when he answered. He simply said, no. And so began an amazing journey together. I hope you know, look what you created, look what you built together, Nan. And it's a masterpiece. It's absolutely beautiful. I saw with pride the love he felt for his family. At life cycle events here in this sanctuary, at weddings, at confirmations, at B'nai Mitzvah, he loved being a dad, and the only thing he liked more than being a dad was being a GJ, Grandpa Jimmy. Ben, when you were growing up, he single-handedly changed mom and tot classes to parent tot classes because he never missed a class. It changed the lingo in Glencoe. No more mom and tots. It was parent and tots because of Jimmy. He was a feeder, he was a diaper changer, he did it all. He never missed a game, maybe one. And he said that he only had one regret in life. When a Dairy Queen closed in one of his malls, he didn't take the Blizzard machine. That's his only regret in life. He always knew what to say and when to say it. He was so incredibly forgiving. We talked a lot about growing up. We talked a lot about the world that he created. I looked at my texts from the last few years. I had the honor of traveling with him and walking the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I had the honor of learning about the Equal Justice Initiative, and he just wanted to get involved. After he retired, after he transitioned, he wanted to get involved. He met with organizations to immerse himself fully, and then he got sick. There are so many incredible texts that he shared, and I quote, "My head is spinning with thoughts, but there are positive, good ones. My heart and soul are soaring, and I am filled with love, thoughts, good vibes, and positive juju." J-E-W, J-E-W. From so many others. My body is comfortable. I am at peace. Stay strong and at peace. Appropriate music has its place as well. Late spring, he wrote that we started to meet in person. We met on the terrace at Am Shalom. Conversation after conversation, visit after visit. This past August 19th, he came by to pick up a challah. He loved to drive his fancy Porsche in to pick up a free challah. It just made him feel good. I said, "I love your texts." And immediately later that afternoon, he writes, "Since you loved my text, try this one. My prayer for today. Grant me peace, grant me quiet, loving, laughter-filled times with my friends and beloved family. Grant me Nancy's never-ending smile and warm hand to always hold, the smiles and giggles and love of little people, even if it means a little whining once in a while. Grant me a good conversation with a good friend, and someday, hopefully soon, an enchilada verde con pollo and proper Chicago hot dog dragged through the garden. Add a little sauerkraut, but hold the sport pepper and celery salt. Pickle on the side. Grant me peace. Amen." And then one of my favorites, October 18th, just a month and a half ago. He sent me a song, Seasons of Love from Rent. To an AIDS patient, a year used to be a lifetime. Now, question mark? To a cancer patient, what I'd give for 525,600 minutes. I choose, as you know, to measure not in days or weeks or even years, but in life events. Like the note 5-year-old Cade Kaplan left in his bathroom for his parents, correctly spelling and using such staples as butthole and such. These are the irreplaceable moments which inspire, make me smile and laugh, often bring a tear to my eyes. This is how I measure a life. And the first of last month, I sent him a text, "How are you?" I literally just picked up the phone to go to send you a message, and I got yours. I miss our talks. It's been quite a week. And he detailed all that was happening. And then, just on Thanksgiving, as always, I'm comforted and inspired by your words. I am so grateful for a life filled with family and friends and smiles. I'm blessed for this life and this journey that I've been given to live. And so his words today are the last. One of the things that he loved was he started to play in our band with Ken and with Noah, with Kenner Markowitz, with Kenner Staple. He would play for Social Justice Shabbat, and there was one song that he loved, "Heal Us Now." We pray for healing of the body, we pray for healing of the soul. And so we rise as we listen to these words. We ask that you sing along because that's what he would want. Heal us now.
רפאנו אדוני ונרפא, הושיענו וניוושע, אל קרוב לכל קרוב, אך קרוב לירח אישו. We pray
Join us
for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray to once again be whole. Elor Refana. Oh, please heal us now. Refuat ha-nefesh urefuat ha-guf, refuah shalema. Heal us now. Heal us now. Heal us now.
And so we find healing by being together. We find healing from the words of our tradition on the back of the service supplement. We ask for God to watch over his soul. We return his body to the earth, and together we say the Kaddish prayer. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei kol Beit Yisrael. B'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mavorach leolam omei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha brichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'romav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved, and let us say amen. Donations in his honor can be made to Shalom, to the American Cancer Society, to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and to the Jean and Lou Malnati Brain Tumor Institute. We're going to remain standing, not for a moment of silence, but to hear one of his favorite songs. As the family makes their way down the hall, do not pass go, do not pass, don't stop to talk to anyone. I need you to go directly to the social hall, because if you don't get there now, you will never get there for the next 3 hours. You have a great opportunity to visit with the family, to eat, to share stories, to honor his memory, because that's what he really wanted more than anything, a true celebration of life. There's lots of food and there's lots of opportunity to visit. It's a nice big room to spread out. And as we make our way, we listen to these beautiful words of Alison Krauss.
It's amazing how you can speak right to my heart. Without saying a word, you can light up the dark. Try as I may, I could never explain what I hear when you don't say a thing. The smile on your face lets me know that you need me. There's a truth in your eyes saying you'll never leave me. The touch of your hand says you'll catch me if ever I fall. You say it best when you say nothing at all. All day long I can hear people talking out loud. But when you hold me near, you drown out the crowd. Old Mr. Webster could never define what's being said between your heart and mine. The smile on your face lets me know that you need me. There's a truth in your eyes saying you'll never leave me. The touch of your hand says you'll catch me if ever I fall.